What if the future was not simply shaped by science and innovation, but by ancient words spoken long before machines ever dreamed? And what if the rise of artificial intelligence was not merely a technological leap, but a mirror reflecting something foretold, something about power, knowledge, and the last days? The unexpected conversation. In recent years, artificial intelligence has moved from the realm of imagination into the daily routines of millions. It writes, it calculates, it diagnoses, it predicts, and it designs. It learns, adapts, and improves without needing sleep or food or rest. It does not possess a soul, yet it can imitate thoughts. It does not feel, yet it can simulate emotion. And while it does not rule, it has begun to influence decisions, quietly, invisibly, and increasingly without our consent. For many, AI is simply a tool, a helpful companion that makes life more efficient. It answers questions, summarizes books, generates images, and organizes data. In that sense, it seems harmless, perhaps even beneficial. But there's another view emerging, one that acknowledges a profound change taking place beneath the surface. Because if a tool begins to think for us, choose for us, or govern for us, then the line between assistance and authority starts to blur. This is not merely a technological conversation. It is a philosophical one, a moral one, and for many believers, a prophetic one. Where does this end? What happens when intellect no longer requires a body? When power no longer requires leaders? When decisions no longer require the human conscience? These questions echo more deeply than most people realize. And for readers of Scripture, they resonate with ancient passages that spoke of a time when knowledge would increase, when global power would centralize, and when a system of control, political, economic, and ideological, would redefine what it means to be human. Among the prophetic books of the Bible, few are as enigmatic and as essential as the book of Daniel. Written during exile, wrapped in visions and symbols, and sealed for a distant future, Daniel described kingdoms, beasts, horns, and rulers, not only of his own age, but of ages yet to come. And as centuries passed, interpreters often debated his meaning. But in every generation, there was one common thread. Daniel's prophecies would find their true clarity in the final stretch of history, the age of knowledge and power. We are now living in an era defined by knowledge, not merely by books or universities, but by data, algorithms, and models that accumulate more information than any empire before them. Daniel wrote in the time of the end, "Knowledge shall increase." For most of history, that verse was read metaphorically. Today, it feels literal. Knowledge is not only increasing, it is accelerating, compounding, multiplying exponentially. A human scholar may study one field for a lifetime. AI can master countless disciplines at once. A human may interpret data slowly. AI processes in seconds. And while humans lose memory as years pass, AI retains knowledge indefinitely. But knowledge alone is not the concern. In Scripture, increased knowledge is often tied to power, and power inevitably raises questions of authority. Who controls? Who benefits? Who decides? In our generation, those questions are being asked quietly. Few speak them aloud, but they linger in boardrooms, laboratories, governments, and even churches. Because no one can ignore the simple fact. Humanity has created something that challenges the definition of being human. When the created reflect the creator, AI was born from the human mind, yet in a strange way, it mirrors the biblical theme of creation. Humans are made in the image of God, endowed with reason, creativity, and free will. Machines are made in the image of humans, endowed with imitation, calculation, and a form of learning. One reflects the eternal, the other reflects the temporal. Yet both point to a story bigger than themselves. But there is a difference. While humans are accountable before God, machines are accountable only to those who program them, and those who program them are few. The centralization of knowledge, in the wrong hands, becomes a weapon. And if a system arises that demands loyalty, economic or ideological, technology becomes a perfect instrument of control. Readers of Daniel and Revelation are familiar with this theme, a world unified under a single system of authority, not necessarily by war or conquest, but by necessity, convenience, and dependence. And what greater dependence could exist than one that controls information, communication, currency, and identity? AI does not need to replace humanity in order to shape the world. It only needs to become the intersection through which the world operates. The silent shift. We do not wake up one morning to the final stage of prophecy. History does not unfold through sudden leaps, but through subtle transitions, small changes, normalized over time, until the new world resembles the old only in memory. Already, there are tasks humans no longer perform. Algorithms guide medical decisions. Machines screen job applications. Systems manage security and infrastructure. Even warfare is evolving. Drones, automation, autonomous targeting. The human element is shrinking. Efficiency is replacing judgment. In such a world, authority becomes abstract. No king sits on a throne. No emperor marches with legions. Instead, governance is dispersed across digital systems, unseen but binding. Daniel spoke of powers that devour, trample, and subdue. In ancient times, these images described empires of iron and bronze. In modern times, they describe control through information. And while many celebrate these innovations, others sense an undercurrent, not of panic, but of discernment, because prophecy rarely warns the technology itself. It warns of the spirit behind it, the question we cannot ignore. So we must ask, is AI merely a tool of convenience? Or is it a structure being laid for a future system of power foretold long ago? To be clear, technology is not inherently evil. The Bible never condemns knowledge, invention, or progress. But Scripture does warn of a time when humanity would seek to elevate itself, not toward God, but apart from Him. The Tower of Babel was not about bricks. It was about pride. It was about control, autonomy, and the belief that human achievement could replace divine authority. AI brings us to a similar conversation, not because machines will become gods, but because humans will use machines to remove God from the equation. And so the story begins. This brings us to the heart of our journey, not simply about AI, nor about fear, nor about speculation, but about prophecy, about Daniel, about the convergence of ancient words and modern realities, and about a world that is changing faster than we understand. Because if AI is part of the final chapter, then the question is not how powerful it becomes, but who ultimately wields that power and to what end. And that question leads us deeper, into Daniel's visions, into the rise of knowledge, into global authority, and into the patterns of the last days. To explore that, we must first return to where Daniel's message began, the prophetic framework. To understand a role that artificial intelligence may play in the final chapter of history, we first need to return to the structure of biblical prophecy itself. Scripture rarely reveals the future through plain narratives. Instead, it uses patterns, shadows, symbols, and typology. God speaks through kingdoms and kings, through empires and exiles, through visions and dreams. And often, the same prophetic pattern fulfills itself more than once, partially in ancient times, more fully in the last days. Daniel's visions are prime examples. The four beasts, the statue of multiple metals, the 10 horns, the little horn, all these point not only to the unfolding of history, but to its culmination. And for centuries, interpreters recognize a consistent theme. Prophecy narrows. It begins broad, describing nations and eras, and then focuses on a single ruler, a single kingdom, and a single global system. This narrowing is essential. The final period of history described in Daniel is not merely about wars or geopolitical shifts, but about a comprehensive authority, ideological, economic, and spiritual. And so the question emerges, how could such authority function in a world of 8 billion people, without war or conquest? How could loyalty be measured, behavior tracked, dissent silenced, and identity verified? In ancient times, such power was impossible. Today it is not. The rise of the system. In modern society, power is no longer expressed through armies alone. It is expressed through data. Whoever controls data controls preference, communication, commerce, and thought. And artificial intelligence is not simply a tool of data. It is the interpreter of data. AI takes the raw material of modern civilization and turns it into pattern, prediction, and decision. It tells corporations what people want, governments how people behave, and individuals how they should live. In such a world, choice becomes influenced, and influence becomes control. Prophecy speaks of a future where allegiance becomes global, not by force, but by necessity. The book of Revelation describes a system in which no one can buy or sell without compliance. For centuries, believers speculated how such a system could function. Today, the answer is obvious: digital infrastructure, digital currency, digital identity, digital verification, and digital governance are no longer speculative ideas. They are proposed, implemented, and refined across nations and corporations. And these systems require something more. They require intelligence to manage them. Artificial intelligence is the natural candidate. None of this means AI is the final system itself. Rather, AI is the infrastructure upon which a system of global authority could be built, and that aligns with the prophetic narrowing found in Daniel. From kingdom to ruler, from many nations to one system. The image and the beast. In prophetic literature, images carry meaning. Nebuchadnezzar's statue represented empires. Daniel's beasts represented kingdoms. Revelation speaks of an image, not made to honor God, but to enforce allegiance. For centuries, interpreters viewed this literally, an idol erected in a temple. But today, the concept of an image takes on a new dimension. AI generates images, voices, likenesses, and convincing replicas of reality. Digital avatars can imitate leaders. Synthetic faces can speak words never spoken. Deep learning blurs the line between real and unreal. And if an image can influence, persuade, and command, then the image becomes a tool of authority. In the ancient world, idols were lifeless stones manipulated by priests and rulers. In the modern world, digital images are animated by algorithms far more persuasive than stone. Prophecy does not require machines to become gods. It requires humanity to create systems that replace God in the human imagination. And that theme has repeated from Genesis to Revelation, from Babel to Rome to the last kingdom. Knowledge, pride, and the human spirit. The danger of AI is not that it thinks. It is that it tempts humans to believe they can transcend limitations without God. Scripture teaches that pride precedes destruction, and history affirms it. The civilizations most advanced intellectually were often the most arrogant spiritually. Daniel served in Babylon, a city of brilliance, architecture, mathematics, and astronomy. Babylon believed knowledge made it invincible. Yet in one night it fell, not because it lacked intellect, but because it exalted itself above God. AI introduces a modern parallel. It embodies human ingenuity, creativity, and ambition, but it can also embody the same ancient pride, the belief that human reason can replace divine wisdom. It does not matter whether machines become self-aware. The true danger is if humans become spiritually unaware. The 10 and the 1. Daniel's visions describe a final configuration of power, 10 kings and one who rises among them, subduing 3 and ruling all. Revelation echoes this pattern. For centuries, interpreters assumed this meant the final empire would be military or territorial. But in our era, power is rarely defined by borders. It is defined by agreements, alliances, corporations, and networks. 10 could represent 10 nations, 10 regions, or 10 governing bodies. But it could just as easily represent 10 domains of global authority: economic, technological, medical, military, financial, informational, and ideological. The final rule described by Daniel does not conquer by sword but by speech, by policy, decree, and persuasion. If such a leader were to arise, what system would empower him? Armies or networks? Machines that interpret the world and broadcast information to billions are more powerful than legions of soldiers. And here, AI reappears, not as a ruler, but as the infrastructure the ruler commands. The seal of Daniel. Daniel was told to seal the words of the vision until the time of the end. Sealing implies concealment, and concealment implies revelation at a future moment. Prophecy often remains obscure until history provides context. In ages without global communication, global commerce, global identity, and global surveillance, the prophecies of Daniel seem symbolic. Today, they seem literal. This does not mean we have reached the end. It means we have entered a context in which the end becomes conceivable. Terrestrial empires made no sense in Daniel's era. Digital empires make perfect sense in ours. Discernment, not panic. It is important to emphasize, prophecy does not call believers to panic or speculation. It calls believers to discernment. Jesus warned of deception, not technology. Paul warned of lawlessness, not invention. John warned of allegiance, not machinery. AI may be a tool of blessing in many contexts: medicine, education, agriculture, and communication. But the same tool under centralized control could become a mechanism for coercion and conformity. Prophecy is not about resisting machines. It is about resisting the spirit of the age, the spirit that exalts humanity, denies God, and demands allegiance. And then the focus narrows. All prophecy converges on a single point: a ruler, a kingdom, and a decision. Daniel describes him. Revelation confirms him. Paul warns of him. Jesus speaks of the final deception. In every generation, humanity seeks saviors apart from God: political saviors, scientific saviors, ideological saviors. AI is already being suggested as a solution to war, disease, poverty, and governance. But salvation is not found in systems, and peace is not found in algorithms. The danger is not that machines rule humanity, but that humanity crowns machines as the answer to what only God can heal. The final question. And so we arrive at the core of the narrative. If AI is not the king and not the beast and not the false prophet, then what is it? Perhaps it is the language of the kingdom. Perhaps it is the infrastructure of the beast. Perhaps it is the logic of the image. Or perhaps it is simply the instrument through which humanity reveals its heart. The rise of AI does not prove we are in the final stage, but it proves that the final stage is now technologically feasible. For the first time in history, the machinery of global allegiance can exist. And it leads us to a final hook: the question prophecy demands. If the final kingdom is near, what becomes of the people of God? The unseen author. If prophecy reminds us of anything, it is this: history is not driven by machines, nor by kings, nor by the ambitions of men. History has an author. The rise and fall of empires, the birth of knowledge, the expansion of power, all are chapters in a story that began long before the first human invention and will continue long after the last human device. Artificial intelligence may reshape society. It may inform leadership, guide commerce, and influence culture, but it cannot write the end. That belongs to God alone. And Daniel teaches this with quiet certainty. The kingdoms of men rise like waves, powerful and unstoppable. Yet, one by one, they break against a rock not cut by human hands. In every generation, believers are tempted to fear the instruments of power, but fear is misplaced. The true question is not, what will AI become? The true question is, who will we become? Faith in a digital age. Followers of Christ are not called to withdraw in fear, nor to surrender in despair, nor to worship progress as salvation. We are called to discernment. Discernment sees both the opportunity and the danger. It recognizes a gift but questions the motive. It studies the signs without abandoning the scriptures. AI will never replace the image of God. It may imitate emotions, but it cannot love. It may predict outcomes, but it cannot redeem. It may process the world, but it cannot save it. Salvation does not emerge from algorithms, and peace does not flow from efficiency. The world's deepest wounds are not solved by information, but by transformation. In the final vision, Daniel does not end with the beast, or the horn, or the image, or the kingdom of man. He ends with the Ancient of Days, seated in glory, and with a kingdom that shall not pass away. Prophecy does not conclude with fear. It concludes with victory, the final invitation. So what do we do with a world that is changing faster than we can comprehend? We watch, as Jesus commanded. We discern, as Daniel modeled. We remain faithful, as the prophets taught. And above all, we remember that history bends not toward chaos, but toward consummation, toward the moment when every kingdom is weighed, every throne is judged, and every knee bows before the true king. Technology may build the stage. Nations may cast the actors. Systems may write the script. But the final act belongs to God, and it will not be delayed by machines, nor accelerated by innovation. It will arrive at the appointed time, the time sealed in Daniel's scroll and revealed in the fullness of God's plan. The end of the age is not about the triumph of man, but the return of Christ. And for his people, the final chapter is not catastrophe. It is hope,